Antibiotics are the only class of medications where when I take it, it not only impacts me, but has the potential to impact other people around me.
This is UCLA Newsweek. This week from UCLA. Fighting drug-resistant superbugs, a symposium challenging nursing stereotypes, and a threesome of student humanitarians. Dr. Daniel Uslan breaks down the nature of drug-resistant superbugs and runs through some tips for prevention.
So a superbug is a bacteria that is resistant to most or all of the antibiotics that we would normally have to treat that bacteria. And there isn't one particular superbug, there's actually several different kinds. Some of the ones that we're most concerned about lately are methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA. Another one that recently got a lot of attention is what's called carbapenem-resistant Klebsiella pneumoniae, or CRKP. That bacteria in particular is very concerning. So people could come into the hospital or catch a routine infection, and we have very limited antibiotics to treat that infection. Most of these infections are in people who are chronically ill, who may be a dialysis patient or on a chronic ventilator, and these are not striking randomly people who are walking down the street. But for people who are involved in those environments, these are things we're seeing increasingly, and it's becoming a public health concern.
We go into the lab to learn about the evolving relationship between bacteria and the antibiotics used to stave them off.
How this works is you just streak your bacteria out across this entire plate and then draw different discs that contain antibiotics onto the plate. And so each disc has a specific concentration of antibiotic, and that antibiotic will diffuse out away from the disc. And so near the disc is a high concentration of antibiotic, and further away from the disc is a lower concentration. Occasionally, we get an organism like this, where we see essentially no zones of inhibition around any of the discs. And you might see, a small zone of inhibition here, but really that's not significant enough for that drug to be effective against that bacterium. When we see this in the lab, that is of concern for us, I guess you could say.
So hand washing is critically important to prevent the spread of resistant bacteria, but also making sure that your healthcare workers, your doctors, nurses, physical therapists, they're washing their hands and that they're not having contact with sick patients. Another thing that we're doing is putting patients with these types of infections in isolation. Doctors have to wear gowns and gloves when they have contact with patients who have these infections. Antibiotic resistance isn't a new problem. That's something we've known from the very first days patients were getting antibiotics back 70 years ago. What's different is that as antibiotics have become more and more widely abused, the bacteria are becoming resistant to more and more different types of antibiotics until we're finally starting to reach the point where we've run out of antibiotics to treat the bacteria. Antibiotics are the only class of medications where when I take it, it not only impacts me, but has the potential to impact other people around me, because if the bacteria that I have get resistant to an antibiotic, it can spread to other people. It's the only class of medications that work like that. I think the most important thing is to treat antibiotics like a limited natural resource, because that's really what they're becoming.
Mary Sue Heileman sat in studio to discuss the symposium, Media, Images, and Screen Representations of Nursing. The nursing school aims to deepen the conversation about images of nursing and to inspire people, including Los Angeles screenwriters and filmmakers, to think differently about nurses.
We hope to deepen the discourse and challenge the stereotypes that have often depicted nurses as single, unidimensional stereotypes, rather than multidimensional health professionals who are skilled, educated, talented, patient advocates who are also human beings. As time went on, the two most available archetypes of images of women tended to be this angel of mercy, suffering servant, or the sensual object of desire, the female nude. And it's as if television and film has fallen into that same pattern. People all over the world get a misinterpretation of what nursing is. Now, how that affects us here in the United States is specifically focused on individuals who would otherwise choose to become a nurse, but instead choose to become something else because their understanding of what nursing is diminished by the stereotype on TV. But it has a far-reaching effect in other countries where nursing is so vital to healthcare systems that are so in such dire need and failing. The global nursing shortage is imperiled because of the images that are created in TV and film and are beamed around the world and are not offering the reality of the realistic view of the multidimensional nurse who has a life and a challenging career. For this reason, we also feel that our conference is important to bring this to light and to start talking about it so that we can actually challenge and change it.
3 graduating seniors were honored with the 2011 Charles E. Young Humanitarian Award for their outstanding commitment to public service. The award ceremony, a private event for family and friends, took place May 5th in the Charles E. Young Grand Salon at UCLA's Kirchhoff Hall.
I am part of Happy Feet Clinic, who's being nominated today for an award. What we do is we serve the homeless population in Los Angeles with foot care, which they otherwise would have no access to.
What the program does is it provides companionship to seniors at elderly caregiving facilities who don't really get visitors. Some of them get visitors like 1 to 2 times a year, and even less. So they suffer from things like depression and loneliness.
The primary goal of the group is to help current and former foster youth succeed both academically as well as socially.
Community service projects don't usually get as recognized as much, and it's got to know that UCLA really cares about community service. So I'm just very proud of all of the projects that got it and of UCLA too.
For much more on these and other stories, please visit us at newsroom.ucla.edu and comment on Twitter at UCLA Broadcast.